I want to talk to you from this short subject matter. When God shows up at church. When God shows up at church. Has there ever been a time in your life when you let someone down? When you tried, your best sometime, but maybe you just let somebody down. They had high hopes for you coming through for them and you couldn't make it, or something kept you from fulfilling that promise that you had made to them. Many times people pass away and there's major rifts within the family that don't get resolved before that person passes away. Sometimes in sports, we always use that analogy, we practice for the game. We want to make sure when we get in the game, we prepare. As we saw on last week in the Cleveland game, there was a last second shot and the guy missed it, and we look at those things and we look at the guy who missed the shot. We've been practicing, we've been going over this thing over and over and over again, but when they failed to make that shot, how many of us go back and pass them the ball again? Many times in life, it's the same thing. They say, when somebody fails me, man, I don't go back. No, you ain't getting another chance to hurt me. Because a lot of times in those veins, we're so hurt, we will not allow somebody to come back into that safe place that we have set up. So we guard that. So we look at it many times as Christians, we the same way. We hurt, and people let us down. Somebody has done something within our family realm, and we hold grudges, don't we? We're some of the greatest people holding grudges. But we say we're believers, but sometimes we hold those grudges, and it shapes our very lives because we're so consumed with the person and what they've done for us and what they've done to us. It's hard for us to move on. So we understand that we failed and we made mistakes and all this kind of stuff that's going on in our life, but we got to ask ourselves, is there still value in me? I mean, is there still value that I see within myself? Now, I failed him, I failed them, but I failed God too. And how many of us, really say, man, I messed up some stuff with God, but I think he'll still welcome me back? How many of us truly say, well, man, I think he's going to take me back? Or am I just in a place where I'm just going to go ahead and keep on doing my own thing because I think I'd have messed this thing up so bad, I don't think he's going to take me back. Like many of us, the Christians, we say we're going to help, bring folk back, but in the back of our minds, we don't want the jokers over our house, do we? I mean, we're going to be honest. We say that's who we are, but I really don't want you over my house. I'm going to play the church thing while we're at church, but after we leave here, don't talk to me, don't call me, don't do anything. So we find ourselves in that place sometimes, but now we see a place where God shows us the very opposite of what we believe. Here now the church is now taking off, and this is after the resurrection. Jesus is now going on back to heaven, and he leaves the apostles in charge. Now they're about to go out into a place, they're about to do the Lord's work. Now here we find the first portion of Acts 2, Peter is delivering his first message. Now we talked about him last week while he messed up. He messed his thing up so bad, he had walked out on God, he did everything he could to shun himself from that. But yet here God uses him as the vessel to start the church. Now I'm thinking sometimes, will God still use you? Some of us still ask the same question, will God still use me? Now here we find Peter in a position where he has turned his back on God. Left, walked away, did everything he could to disconnect himself from God under the pressure of the religious folks that were standing around. He didn't want, man, I can't be connected to that guy. Nah, I seen you with him. No, I wasn't. That wasn't me. But you think about it like this. He wouldn't even announce that he was a Christian amidst pressure. How many of us do the same thing? And we may not say it outwardly, but boy, we sure doing it inwardly, ain't we? I can put on the great facade in front of folk, but I'm really telling you I'm not connected to you. Peter didn't lie. He did everything he did. He was a part-time Christian. I'm only a Christian when I'm in God's presence. I'm not concerned about some of those other things. I just want to look good in front of God, but under pressure, he showed who he really was. Some of us have been confronted with those same issues, man. I'm cool right now, but man, there's something inside of me I got to get out of me because the pressure that I'm under is too great. Yet here's God coming back to bless him to preach. Now, many of us have failed God so many different ways, but God is saying to you, man, I can still use you. Don't turn the light off on what's going on in your life. Just because you failed me, just because you let folk down and things happen in your life, I can still use you, man. Don't let the world dictate who you are to him. God said, man, I still got you. And you think about it, man, I was thinking about it last week, man, I messed up from the floor up to the ceiling. I know I did, but I said, how can I fix this thing? I said, first, I know I got to go back to them and talk to them about it first before I can ever go back to God and ask him to forgive me, right? So I'm going to put the proper steps in place to understand, man, I got to do something about this thing. I didn't just leave it there stinking. I got to do something about it because I understand the calling. It's greater than that. Now, I talked about the walk. We got to walk this thing because we're going to mess up. I mean, man, sometimes we're not even trying to do it, but it happens. Sometimes we got people that come up against us. And it's hard for us to handle sometimes, right? But how do we get over it? Realizing that God can still help me. God used Peter to deliver his first message to people that were broken and desperate, looking for something. There was a division. They had the Jews who had turned their backs on Christ. Then he had the other new Christians who were standing there looking for something. So Peter stood there with both of these people in here and delivering a word that tells them to get rid of their sin, turn to God. 3,000 people turned around and gave their life over to Christ the very first time. Can you imagine? Now, we preached a sermon for the very first time, and we got 3,000 people to join the church. How big our head would be? Oh, please. Now, I done messed up and turned my back on God. Yeah, I go preach one sermon. I ain't went to no school. I ain't did nothing. I just went there, put my thing down, and look at all these people who don't follow me. I done messed up, turned around, and did all this kind of stuff, but look how God used me. Because we got to understand this. The mission that God has us on is greater than the disappointments that we've had in our lives. Yeah, it's easy to follow the fact that I done let folk down and disappointed him. But he said, man, I'm going to show you what forgiveness truly looks like. You know, I know we talk forgiveness sometime in our own life. I say, yeah, I forgive you, but I don't forget what you did to me. But the part of the thing, what God was trying to say was, I left here, and I'm going to show you when I leave here, the mission has still got to go on. Everything that I planted in you, that you still have to use that very same thing to get you to that next level. Peter, I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you. Yeah, you're the one that acted a fool, and you clown, and you did all these different things. But watch and see what I can do through you, Peter. A lot of us are Peter today. We that same guy. Mouth out of control, you know, we bad when we want to be bad. But God said, I can use you. I can use you. And you think about it, we put ourselves in that place. Man, people were coming now, seeking now somebody who failed God. You think about it, now this dude had messed up. He had done it, but God used him as a vessel to bring folk into the church. Now, that's good stuff here. You think about it now, the mission was greater than the mistakes that he had made. We always got to understand the mission, our job is to what? Bring folks onto him. They ain't talking about Third Dimension Worship Church. Only thing I'm concerned about is expanding the team. He gives me a check every time I go and tell somebody about the kingdom, and they give themselves over. They can go to any church in this city, this country, this world. I have done my part, right? But the thing we got to understand is there's value in the preached word, right? But the true function of preaching is to disturb the comfortability of the people and to confront the comfort and those who are disturbed. We got to confront those things where people have gotten so comfortable in the church and won't do the things that God is asking us to do. Now, I got to disturb you in a place that you're going to do something about it. No, I ain't saying you get mad and run off. I'm saying I got to confront those things in your life that ain't right, and you got to go out there and do something about it. That's what Peter said. He said, man, look here, turn away from the sin that you find yourself in and give yourself over to the Lord and see what I'm going to do with them on top of using you, Peter, because I know you're a bad boy, right? But then he said, look here, I'm talking about when a church, when God shows up in your church, look and see what happens, right? 41 and 42, he said, look here. He said, all the believers now devoted themselves to teaching and fellowship. And they shared in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and in prayer. Wow. Peter said, now, we can see what God is doing now and the effects it has on the believers. Now they're starting to come together, devoting themselves to the word. That's something. Now, I didn't have to battle to get to the Bible study. These are folks that are searching for the word because of something they heard. He said, no, I ain't got to go look for you. Not because you looking for me now. Since now the pendulum is flipped because I used somebody who was broken, who had let me down. Now you heard something from him. Now you got a thirst for me. He said the man who failed God is now the one giving the most powerful platform to the masses. Preaching ain't nothing to be played with, right? He said, I'm going to trust you, Peter, with all your messed up background. I'm going to use you, and you're going to be the one to open up the church. The church was taking on such a huge persona of people. They had to attach themselves to something. They knew they had made mistakes. They wanted to turn their lives around, and they had hope. But because they seen somebody who looked like them delivering a message to them that was empowering them to make them want to go to another level. So the people come and they started to receive the word, and it started to work on them. The word started to work on them, and it started to change them. Amen. These were people who were now hungry for the Lord. Now they're coming together. Now they say they devoted themselves. They gave themselves over. They started to receive the word. Now not only that, they started to fellowship with one another. Now, there's something that happens when God comes into church. You know how sometimes we want to come together. We really do. But there's so many entities sometimes that throws us off. But he said, now wait a minute. They came up under the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, and they start sharing meal, including the Lord's Supper. Does that sound familiar? Now, it's a stair-step thing. They said, I'm going to give myself over. I'm submitting myself over to the people who are above me. Hey, don't that sound familiar? Now, we got to put ourselves in a place where we're being subservient to folk who trying to teach us something. It ain't always pleasant. It ain't always good. But the thing of it is, if we don't give you something that's going to help you get out of that place, we're not doing our jobs, right? He said the impact was so great. They were looking for ways to learn about God. They were hungry for the word. But then they started to share in the very sacrament that God placed before us. In their youth, they understood the fact that not only am I going to follow somebody who gives me something, but I need to start mimicking the things that they do. So as believers and teachers, we're teaching those who may not know how to mimic God. So we come in and we have the Lord's Supper. We have it every week. There's a reason that we do that. Because we have so many who are in and out and, off on and all these kind of things. So we help them, introduce them to something that God ordained for us to have, right? So they're coming together. They're sharing their meals. They're doing everything they had to do. But then, this is what happened. They connected spiritually, which melted their hearts, and they started attaching themselves to one another. This is what happened when the yoke gets broken between the foolishness that takes place within our lives. We always distracted with something. Something always comes up to seem and throws us right off, right? But they understood because they were in the Word. They understood something was different about this thing. So Peter starts breaking this thing down, and then they said the things within their hearts started to change because of the words that they were hearing. Then they start praying with one another. We talk about this a lot on Wednesdays. We talked about it last 6 weeks. Prayer, how important is it is not only just to be praying. We talk about engaging God in a way that we believe He's going to change some things in our life. We ain't talking about no messing around. We talking about actually going into the war room and saying, God, I need you to fix my situation because it's broken. And the only way I can do that, I can't sit around here milling around and play around in church. I need some real prayer in this thing. Because if I don't understand one thing, I know prayer is going to get me out of there. But if I ain't engaging God regularly enough, I don't tap into the power that God gives me. So I don't understand what true prayer really is. You know, I understood it, 12 or 13 years ago when I prayed one prayer to God. He brought me out of that darkness I was in, and I didn't even have no church home. I didn't have no connection with him at all. But I understood one thing. I did that one thing, and I believed it when I did it. He showed up. Some of you in the same position today. You've been praying that prayer, it don't seem like nothing moving. I see like I'm going through the same situation over and over and over. How does that happen when I say I'm connected to him? My prayer life just ain't strong enough. It just ain't strong enough. Because I'm telling you, the one element of prayer is that I got to believe it before I can come out of my mouth. Yeah. Now, if I ain't believing it before I come out of my mouth, don't even speak it. Because now you're playing around. Because the word says, God said, I know what you need before you ask me. I just want you to ask me. But the thing of it is, the will of God has to match up what you're talking about. So you talking here and talking something crazy. God said, man, please, come on now, get yourself together. Now, don't talk about removing folk out of my house and I'm inviting other folk in there and doing the same thing. No. That ain't the will of God. I can't have nobody laying up in my house I know I ain't married to, but I'm going to talk about I want me a godly man. Come on now, God said, I'm not going to answer that. So when they come to you, understand what true prayer is. That's when you move, right? But the church has become a selfless place. Not thinking about what opposed them. They talked about how they can give themselves over to God. But then he said this. He said a deep sense of awe came over them. And the apostles performed many miracles and signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and they shared everything they had. Uh-oh. Now you're asking me to give. And right there, the apostles were empowered through the people coming together. If you're talking about God coming into your church, it takes a submission, not only to him, but to one another. When we understand that we come together, there's a multitude of people that can come together that has power. He said, not only that, he said they have a deep sense of awe that came over them. And as they got aligned, the apostles start to perform. The church sometimes is broken because of the people are so broken, they don't lift up the ones who are over them to help them get to that next place. So when they came into an alignment for what God was doing, then the apostles started getting strength and they started doing the things that God had already possessed them and gave them the power to do. Yes. They came together because they were in alignment with what God wanted. They became conscious that God was working and they started to give over themselves. Many of us are sitting in that same place today. We're waiting on God to transform us. But God says, I need you to be in alignment for what I'm teaching. Once you get into the alignment of what I'm trying to show you, that's when the movement of God starts to take place. Yeah. When you're out of alignment, it's hard to drive a car down the street straight when the tires want to fight you and go a whole nother way. The church is the same way. If we got folks trying to go to the left, trying to go to the right, and the pastor's trying to fight, trying to keep the cars going straight down the road, I'm battling against stuff I shouldn't have to battle against. Don't hold me to a standard that you're not willing to hold yourself to. Nah, I shouldn't have to come in here every week and I tell you the same thing. Now, I can't be everywhere for everybody, but I tell you this, I serve a God who can be there for everybody when the time comes. But the thing is this, if I can't get you to come to church every week, I can't get you to give like you're supposed to be giving, don't talk to me about commitment, because I'm committed to doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Now don't clown on me, because I'm trying to do the best that I can with what I've been given. But to know this, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there in spirit and in truth. And you best know I'm praying. Even if I ain't sure, I'm connected to a God who can get there. So don't talk to me about commitment when you are every other week Christian. Or you say you put in the envelope that's empty. Don't talk to me about commitment. We talking about when God shows up in your church, we want to make sure we're doing everything that God wants us to do. They came together because they understand they were under the same call, mind and purpose. They were people who bought into the vision. It wasn't about them anymore. They were submissive unto God. They were willing to give themselves over. Not holding grudges, not going through the foolishness that goes on. Their attitudes were transformed. They were glad to minister and worship with God. They sold everything that they had, and the money that they got, they shared it with one another to make sure there is no more need. Imagine a church that still comes together and still can share with one another. They said they gave everything that they had. How about you bought that brand new Cadillac? Man, I ain't taking that back. Jesus said, give it up. Because that money can get 3 or 4 people a car. How about that? I'm going to take that brand new car that I bought with my money, and I'm going to put it back in that garage in that house that I bought. I don't care about them. I might take them home if they need a ride. That's about the best I'm going to do. But I'm praying for God to do something supernatural in my life. God bless me with the money that I need to buy a Cadillac. But I chose now to look at myself and my accomplishments. He said, Peter, preach a word that's going to change you. But look what God did. When everybody started to come together, 47, verse 47, he said, look here, how did they respond? He said, all the while praising God, they were in worship. They were enjoying the goodwill of all the people. So they enjoyed everything that was being shared, right? So when God saw everything starting to come together, everybody started submitting themselves unto him, and watch what he said. He said, in each day, God added to their fellowship who was saved. He didn't say the church did it. He said he brought the body together, and they were saved. They went through the Lord's Supper, then they got themselves saved. But the question has to become, are you ready for God to come into your church? They worship together, they pray together for one another because the impact that God had on their life. They fellowship with one another, they shared meals, and they came together. What happened was the church was being created, and he showed us a model of which to follow. The history was the churches started small. They only let the church get to 100 members, and they would break off and start another one because they wanted to keep the intimacy of the small church intact. That's how the church started to bloom. So they were more concerned about creating an atmosphere within the church that would allow them to take that same vibrato to another church. So I used somebody who was broken, disconnected, who had turned their back on me. I'm going to use him as the model to bring all these other churches together. They're going to be able to bring the word, and they're going to be able to take that same infectious spirit to a whole nother church because I trusted you people. Although you left me, you didn't do the things I asked you to do, you even turned your back on me. But I still saw something in you. I didn't give up on you. And God's telling you the same thing there. I ain't giving up on you, man. There's something I see inside of you that other folk don't see. Yeah, they look at the fact you didn't pick them up on time. I lost my job. I don't like my boss and all these different kind of things. He said, but I still see something in you. It don't take glasses to see this. He said, I see something in you, Peter, and I'm going to bring it out of you. And you're going to be a blessing to those who come in and they need you. Today is your day to find that connection that you need.
Thank you for watching. Please come join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. We are located at 40 West 40th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46208. We are located inside of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center. Remember to stay connected and subscribe to our YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and website. Thank you and have a blessed week. God bless.